welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing Westworld Season 3, Episode 1. This episode is titled Parce Domine, Spare Us, O Lord, which in many ways appears to establish the theme for this season, a war between and among virtual gods, including Dolores and her kind, Dolores and Bernard being on opposite sides, and between her kind and the supercomputer Rehoboam. There's not much in the way of action this episode, mainly an introduction to a new main character, to Dolores' overall strategy, and mysteries to be solved later in the season. The first new character we're introduced to is Caleb, a former soldier down on his luck, unable to advance due to Rehoboam's control over his advancement in society. Think that Black Mirror episode on social currency. Caleb is reduced to theft and drug dealing to support his sick mother, who appears to be suffering from dementia, and he recently unsubscribed from a program designed to help people manage their grief that allowed him to talk with the voice of his dead friend. Just as Caleb concludes that to move on, he needs someone real, he meets Dolores. It's strongly suggested that through her ability to access at least the outer layers of this technology, she was able to orchestrate their entire encounter, including, by the way, his vulnerability in that moment. And you have to wonder if Dolores is responsible for his friend's death as well, which we see bits of in flashbacks, but I'm guessing by the end of the season, we'll see entirely what went down and her role in that, if any. Another new character we get to see is Liam, Dolores' tech heir boyfriend, whose father helped create Rehoboam. We learn that Dolores has attached herself to him in the hopes of finding the tech's surviving architect, who has actual control over the system. With it, she would be able to have almost limitless power over the lives of mankind, including the past that this computer has created for them. In terms of strategy, besides acquiring human allies by way of manipulation, we also see Dolores use what access she does have to acquire much of, if not the entirety, of Delos. In one instance, she robs investor Jesse and uses what she learned about him both in and outside Westworld to acquire information concerning a program called Insight, before ultimately causing his death. She also apparently hacked the system of the Delos CEO, using a host Charlotte to take the business private and point the finger for its downfall on Bernard. Speaking of which, Bernard is hiding out on the farm, a la Picard, working as a butcher. He's developed a unique strategy for checking to see if his diagnostics have been tampered with, namely by Dolores. He doesn't trust himself, and we see that he doesn't trust himself even with his own defense, as he uses a switch to turn on some ability to fight for himself when he has to. This ability also helps him to escape when he's identified. By the end of the episode, we learn that Bernard is heading back to Westworld. And that leads us to our questions. One of the questions I had after this episode is, what is this implant that some people apparently need, that Caleb rejects? And if Dolores acquires control of Rehoboam, will she also acquire control over those who bear it? Will we have a situation here where the host can at some point turn the humans into effectively robots? I also wonder, does Rehoboam have its own defense mechanism of some kind? We know Dolores has replicated the Scotsman who protected Rehoboam, and we know she's replicated Charlotte, even though there is a lingering question as to whether Charlotte is Charlotte or whether Charlotte is Teddy. We know Bernard is headed back to Westworld, but the question there is, why? And who is he going to see? Based on the after credit scene featuring Maeve, we can probably guess pretty confidently that he's going back to secure her. Maeve is in Westworld, or at least in one of the parks in Westworld, in World War II world, or what have you. And we know Maeve's power to control other hosts would be of use to Bernard, especially if he's going to go to war with Dolores. Lastly, a question was raised in this episode about the possibility of all of this being a simulation, of nobody being in the real world. And that would be interesting to see too, if Rehoboam has in fact put everyone into a much larger simulation, and if Westworld was in fact a simulation in a simulation. That would kill me. That would be absolutely hilarious if that turned out to be the case. But hey, who knows? Overall, I would say this is a good start to the season. I love the look into the human world and just how vulnerable it's allowed itself to become. I fully expect to see more individual stories as the characters converge toward their conflict. Rehoboam may become the enemy of my enemy by season end. It will be interesting to see if Dolores is being set up to be more of a savior than the destroyer she intended. After all, she's already saving humans. What if she ends up having to save the world? But hey, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next week for the next episode.